Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the KETIV Autodesk Virtual Academy, your one-stop shop for anything and everything Autodesk. As usual, I'm Nigel Mbayak, and you might be questioning, who is here beside me? Well, this is Nathan Eliason, one of the AEs on our team here. Nathan, thank you for joining us today.
Thanks for having me, Nigel.
For sure. So today we're going to be going over bill materials in Fusion Lifecycle. I know we've already gone over bill materials and things like Inventor, but Fusion Lifecycle is definitely a little bit different. Fusion Lifecycle, formerly known as PLM 360, right, Nathan?
Correct.
Nathan will kind of explain what Fusion Lifecycle is more in depth, but it is one of the new products from the product innovation platform, which kind of lets you take your products from like the beginning of the design process all the way, even past manufacturing sometimes, and maintain that connection through the whole process, make everything easier for you, and to maintain, kind of cleanliness in that workflow. So with that, Nathan, do you mind explaining a little bit about Fusion Lifecycle and why we're doing this today?
Yeah, absolutely. So today, Fusion Lifecycle, I'm going to get into it in just a minute what it is and explain that a little bit deeper. But really what the purpose for our meeting here today is first just want to talk about how do you create items, how do you create bill of materials inside of Fusion Lifecycle. Fusion Lifecycle is a web-based or cloud-based application. So in order to access the system, all you need is a web browser. And through the web browser, you log in and you're able to manage all of the important information that you need to manage during the whole development cycle while you're either creating a new project or a new product or anything like that. We're also going to talk about the different types of information that you can track with the bill of materials, so all of your information can be in a single place. We're going to talk about managing the BOM, how you let different people have their own views of the information that is important to them with the bill of materials. And then we're going to wrap up the session today by looking at how you can take some bill of material information you may have in a format like Excel, and you can quickly import that into the system. So as Nigel mentioned, Fusion Lifecycle itself is a web or cloud-based application, and it has a lot of different capabilities that it provides your company, again, to help with that whole, like, let's call it the product development process. We have some new product introduction processes. It can handle change management. It can handle quality management. It can handle supplier collaboration. There's a lot of these different capabilities that it has. And what's nice about Fusion Lifecycle is that all of this information can be shared between these different systems. So for example, if you have an RMA for a customer and you open up a CAPA so that you can investigate what the root cause was for that problem and how to fix it, once you define what the fix is, then that can immediately go into a change order. And that change order can immediately go in and change the appropriate items and bills of materials. So all of these different parts of the system are connected together, so it gives you a really nice audit trail, and it gives all of that functionality in a single application. Now, as I mentioned today, what we're really going to focus on is just the item and the bill of material portion of the software. Today, I've been out talking to a lot of different customers. When we're talking again about the development cycle, so before a product is actually released and it's put through manufacturing, a lot of companies today use Excel. Some companies I've seen will create their own systems. Some have other systems out there to try to manage the bill of material before a product gets released. But really, that's where a lot of the pain is that we're seeing with our customers, is that initial part. How do we manage the bill of material before it gets released? Excel is widely used because it's very easy. Just about everybody has it. Everyone knows how to use it. So because of that, it's widely used. However, there are a few issues that we generally see when customers or when companies use Excel to track their BOM information. First of all, what typically happens is, an engineer might come up with an initial design and create an initial version of that bill of material. Then they send it out to manufacturing, they send it out to purchasing, maybe there's some environmental compliance information. So they send that spreadsheet out to all these different groups. Then they start adding their own columns, they start making their own changes to that bill of material to handle the information that they need to process. And so now you end up with all these different versions of bills of materials throughout the enterprise. And then what happens when engineers go back and they make a change to that design? They repropagate that out, and a whole bunch more spreadsheets are made. So it's really difficult to keep all of these different versions of the bill of material in sync. Another thing that's difficult to do is to compare different revisions of the bill of material. You know, a lot of times when changes are made, someone wants to quickly know what are the differences, right? They don't want to have to go through a whole long bill of material, line item by line item by line item, to find what those changes are. They'd like to quickly know what are the differences so that I can, you know, make whatever changes I need to. And then there's no standard format. You know, I can create any number of columns, I can name them anything, I can put any type of data in the columns. It's really a free-for-all. And so because of that, there's not any consistency, and there's not sometimes standardization when we do it that way. And these are all the different kinds of issues that we're looking to address with the bill of material capabilities that we have inside of Fusion Lifecycle. So what we can do is we can have all of our product data in a single location, you know, again, not disparate systems or disparate spreadsheets all over the place. What's nice is all of the information is there, and we can just customize different views so that, you know, an environmental compliance person can see the information that's important to them. Costing, you know, someone that has to do the purchasing can see just the information that's relevant to them. We can also track the history of the bill of material. So if I want to go back and say, what did my bill of material look like 2 months ago? I can put a specific date in there, and I can immediately see exactly what the bill of material was like on that date. We can also quickly compare different versions of the bill of material, which is really handy again, so that you don't have to go line item by line item. You can just quickly peruse through and find the relevant information that you need. And then, you know, understanding that a lot of the bill of materials today out there are in Excel format or some similar type CSV format. We can actually import that information into our Fusion Lifecycle system. And I'll go through that in the demonstration today. So let's go ahead and go through our demonstration. I'm going to bring up Fusion Lifecycle here. So here with Fusion Lifecycle is our main homepage. And the first thing that I want to do is go to my items and BOMs work area or workspace. Now understand that this basically gives me a list of all of the different items that I have in our database or in our system. Now I can, you know, it gives me some pretty useful information that I can see all of the records and get some useful information. I might want to have my own type of information. So, you know, let's suppose that I was in purchasing and I wanted to have a view of the costing information when I'm looking at all the records that we have in our database. All I have to do is come up here, create a new view, and start adding the columns that I want to have in the view that I'm looking at. So I'm just going to, you know, add a few little pieces here. One of the things that I want to view might be cost. So give me just a second. We'll add cost there. And then when I click Save, you'll notice that now I can go down here. I can see what my current cost is for all these different parts that I have in my database. You know, also, if your database grows to be really, really large, like tens of thousands of items or even more than that, we can also add filters to our view. So here, if I go back and edit it, you know, maybe I just want to see the 035 family. So we can say, you know, the part number has to start with 035, and now that's going to filter out the view of all the different parts that I have in my system. So there are a lot of tools that really help you narrow down what information you're looking for and to get there fast. Now we're going to go ahead and we're going to create a new item just so that you can see what that process looks like. And we're just going to call this a card assembly. And this is going to be a sub-assembly bill of material. And what's really nice is we have this classification system in here. So all of the different parts that we have that make up our products, we can categorize them or classify them. And then that will let us make new part numbers very quick and easy. So if I were making a fastener, I could click on fastener, which would then bring up some more subtypes like bolts, nuts, screws, shims, and so forth. And this is customizable or configurable so that you can create this to be whatever you need it to be. In our case, we're actually creating a sub-assembly bill of material. So we're going to go ahead and classify it as such. And what this essentially is doing is it's creating my class number so that it can come up with a part number as soon as I hit save. So I'm going to go ahead and hit save, and you'll see that a part number will automatically be generated for me based on the classification. And once we have that created, we're going to go ahead and you can see the number just generated automatically. And we're going to go ahead now and create a bill of materials. So you can see right now, because it's a new item, it's empty. So it's very, very fast and very easy to go in and start adding additional items to our bill of material. Now, obviously, I'm not going to build out the whole bill of material at this point. I'm just going to put a few items so that you can get an idea of what it looks like. Let me just add a couple more quick items here. And then once we're done with that, then I can just come in here. We'll have 4 of these capacitors, 10 of these capacitors, and 1 each of the PC board and the bracket. So once I save and exit, you'll see my bill of material populate. So again, you'll see how fast and easy that was to create that. Another thing I want to point out is notice that we have this attachments field that we can show in our bill of material view. And if I click on that, it will show me all of the attachments to this item. And if I want, I can click on that, and it will actually download a copy of it that I can open, and I can look at that information very quickly. Now, you'll also notice here that we have the quantity and the units, so it kind of gives us this default view. And we're going to see a little bit later in the presentation how we can change that. But for right now, I want to show some of the checks and balances and validation rules that we can build into Fusion Lifecycle to make sure that the data that you put in is correct and that it's accurate. So in this case, we have some capacitors here with the reference designator. I'm just going to go ahead and type in 4 reference designator names here. I skipped 103 on accident, but that's okay. Then on this bottom one, I'm just going to put 1 reference designator and call it C104. And if you notice, I actually created a duplicate here, and I did that on purpose. So when I click Save, you're going to see it's going to come and flag me, and it's going to show me that we can't have duplicates between these 2 rows. So I'm going to go ahead and take this out. And then what it's also telling me is that we have 10 quantity here. That means I would need 10 reference designators, not just 1 or 2 or 3. So there's some rules in here that make sure that as we add information, we can do some checks to make sure that the information is good and that we've entered it properly. So now that we've taken a look on how to create a bill of material and how to make some small changes to it, I'm going to go ahead and we're going to show the search bar here. This is a universal search. I can search any criteria, and it's kind of a web-based type search where it just goes through all of the Fusion Lifecycle tenant that you have and returns the results. And here we have a bill of material that is much further along. As you can see, it has 124 items that are attached to it. Now in this, I want to show some of the different capabilities that we have. So first of all, you'll notice that, again, as I mentioned, for each item that we have, you can look at the attachments, and here's an example that has multiple attachments. If I wanted to grab all of these different types of files, I could just click zip and download, and it would immediately give me a copy of all of these items. So I have them on my desktop so I can look at them and do whatever I need with them. We also have the ability to have a couple different views of our bill of material. This is nested, which means it has a hierarchy, but we can also, if we prefer, have a flat view that lets us come in and lets us see the parts just as a parts list, basically. So there's no hierarchy, it just tells us how many of each type of part that we have. Now, if I go back to nested, as I mentioned, this is really the default view, where it just kind of gives you general information like description, the revision, life cycle, quantity, and so forth. What if I work in environmental compliance And my interest in a bill of material is which of the parts have passed the government or the agency approvals that are required, like RoHS, REACH, or any of those types of those types of things that we have to make sure that we conform to. So here we can go in and we can get a quick view, and this allows me as an environmental compliance person to go in and quickly hone in on the products or the different line items that need to pass approval so I can get my work done more quickly. I want to show, this wasn't necessarily intended to be an administrative look at how Fusion Lifecycle works, but I am going to do a couple of administrative focused tasks just so you can understand how it's working behind the scenes. So here, I want to create a view that shows my cost for each item, but that also shows my cost roll-up. So the unit cost times the quantity to give me a total cost of this bill of material. And we're going to see how pretty simple that is to do from an administrative perspective. So here in my items and BOMs workspace, the administrators have to go in and create this. But what I can do is I can go in and I can create fields. In this case, we're going to create a field called total cost, and it's a money field. So we can select what type of field it is. And notice that we have this roll-up option. So we can roll up different types of information that we have in our system. Now I want to roll up the cost, so I'm telling it, which field I want to roll up, and then I'm telling it give me a maximum, a minimum, or just give me the sum. In this case, we want the sum. So with just a few quick options, I now have this total cost, which represents my rolled up cost of each of the line items. So now we want to create a new bill of material view that's going to show up, and this is going to be called our costing view. And we're going to first add that new field, which is our rolled up cost. We want to be able to see that. We also want to be able to see the individual unit cost. And so we can grab that right here. And I'm actually going to change the name of this so that it's easier to read. We're going to call this our unit cost. Then the next field we need is our quantity. We want to know how many of them are in each one. And then we want our standard description, number, and descriptor. So I'm just going to go ahead and add those fields very quickly. Our description. But you can see how quick and easy it is to come in here and add the different fields that you want and make sure that it shows the information that you're looking for. So now that I have my BOM view created, I'm going to go ahead and save it. And whenever I make changes as administrator, you'll notice right now it doesn't show up here. That's because I need to do a refresh so that it goes back and it knows that that's a new view that's now valid. And as soon as I refresh it, you'll notice that when I pull this down, we'll now have our costing option available. I do also want to point one more thing out. You'll notice that there's this little blue check mark right here. What this shows is this is your default view. So if I am actually in purchasing and the default view I want it to show me as costing, I could come over here and I can click there. And if I click there, that will become my new default view. So that's just a nice little tip to make it easy to always get the view that you're looking for right away instead of having to change views constantly. So when I switch to our view for costing, you'll notice that sure enough we have the quantity for all of these, we have the unit cost, and then we have the rolled up cost of all of those different pieces put together. And then if we also look at the overall subassembly, it's going to roll up the cost of all of these individual components to give me my final cost. So we can do that with weight, we can do that basically with any numeric field. We can do those types of operations to get roll-ups in our bills of materials. Now I also want to show, we talked about the BOM compare. So it's really important sometimes, you want to know what has changed and what's different. So here, actually before we go there, I want to point out that for all of our items that we have inside of Fusion Lifecycle, we have the released version, which you're seeing right here. And notice the released version it's locked, so I can't come in and make any changes to my bill of material. But as soon as I go to the working version, then it's going to allow me to edit my bill of material. It's going to allow me to make changes. So basically, it's like I'm working on a copy of what's released. And then when we get to the point to where we want to release it, we can go through the change management process and make that the new official revision B, C, and so forth. So I'm going to switch to my working version here. And I want to compare what changes have been made to my working version compared to the changes that have been made in my released version here. Notice also, as I mentioned, I could actually look at what was my working revision as of a week ago. So this is also date-based as well as which version that I'm looking at. And when I click apply, in blue is going to be my working version, and all of the red changes you see is going to represent my production version. So right here I can quickly go in and I can see that this cost, the roll-up cost, actually changed. And why did that roll-up cost change? Well, as I scroll down, I can see that here the cost actually went down. Maybe we bought it in larger quantities. Maybe the supplier gave us a price reduction after some negotiations. So there's a price change, and so I could see the resulting effect of that price change. Here you can see I changed it from 1 capacitor to 2 capacitors, and because I changed it, my price of this component actually doubled. And so as I go down, it will quickly show me, depending on the view that I'm in, all of the items that have changed that pertain to that view. So it makes it very, very easy to compare different bills of materials and really speeds up the time it takes me to get my job done, basically, when I'm working with the bill of materials. So right now what I want to do is I'm going to open up Excel. That pretty much wraps up what I wanted to show you with some of the bill of material functionality inside of Fusion Lifecycle. What I wanted to do now was show you how easy and simple it is to import information from an Excel database or an Excel spreadsheet into Fusion Lifecycle. So here's a copy of the spreadsheet, and you'll notice this first column is a level column. And how this works is 0 is basically our top level. So this is our top level item that we're going to be loading into the system. 1, anything labeled a 1 means that it's a direct child of our top level. And any 2 means that it's a child of the 1 above it. So these 2s are children of this one right here. If I scroll down, these 2s are children of this one. And you can make 3s and so forth. So this is basically how the level BOM is structured. Beyond that, we have the typical information you would expect in a bill of material. We have quantity, number, some descriptions, revision, release date, and so forth that are all contained in the spreadsheet. So now that we're familiar with the spreadsheet, and again, this really is an administrator function that I'm going to be going through right now. But what we can do is we can come in here and we can quickly import that spreadsheet. And there's some validation that's done so we can be confident our data is good before it actually loads it into our system. So we want to load information into our items and bill of materials. We're going to do a level BOM, which is the format that I showed you earlier. There are some other formats that you can also create with your Excel spreadsheet. That's just the one that we're going to choose for today. I'm going to go ahead and load up the Excel file, and then we'll call this our demo import. So now what it's going to do is it's going to upload that spreadsheet, and it's going to give me a view of all of the information that's in the spreadsheet. Now it assumes that the first row of my spreadsheet gives all of the titles of the different fields that we're going to be mapping together. And if any of these fields match the fields that are in our items of BOM workspace, it's going to automatically assume there's a match, and it's going to do that for me. If the titles and the field names don't match, I'm going to have to go in and make that match manually. So here, this is what I call the BOM level key. And what that basically, this is telling it's the top level, and it's defining what all the children and the BOM structure is. Quantity, that's our BOM quantity, so we're going to come down here, we're going to match that there. This will be our description 1 field. This will be our description field. This we want to be our revision information. Let me scroll over. This is our unit of measure. And this right here is our release date. So now that I have that put in, I'm going to click Save. And as soon as I click Save, it's going to do some validation checks for me. And it's going to come in and tell me that we have some problems. It's going to tell me that I forgot to define how I want our import to behave. So what's going to happen is if it comes across a new record, I can tell it to add it to the workspace, I can tell it to skip, or to error out and let me know that there's a problem. Well, in this case, we know that none of these items are currently in our database, so we definitely want it to add the new records to our database. Now, if it does find a match, we want it to update the workspace accordingly. And then we do the same thing for BOM relationships. So we want to add it or update it depending on if it doesn't exist or if it already exists. So now when I click Save, we're still going to get a few more errors. And if I come here to my problem report, it will tell me what those errors are. And it says no column was selected as match on. What that means is if I come back here, it says for new records, add to the workspace. Well, how does it know if it's a new record? Well, you have to pick some field for it to match on. So this really is my part number, and I know that there's no duplicates in our system of any of these part numbers. So I'm going to set this as my match on, and what it will do is as it's importing it, if there's a record, if there's an item already in our system that has this number, it's assuming they're the same, and it will do an update instead of adding it as a new record to our bill of material table. So that's basically what that's doing. So now I can go ahead and save it, and it's going to be okay. The rest of these are just warnings. It's just letting us know that as soon as it loads into Fusion Lifecycle, some of these fields will not be able to be edited out. So it's just giving you a warning saying make sure that you're sure the information is good. Now when I click Run, before it actually runs the import, it lets you know this is going to be the effect of your import. Were you expecting it to create 85 new records, or were you expecting it to update 85 records? So this, again, will give you one final check to ensure that it's going to be creating what you're expecting it to. And now once I click Proceed, now it actually runs the import, and all of those items are now part of our database. So if I go back now to our bill of material workspace, and as I scroll down here, let me change back our view to the default. As I scroll down here, we'll see all of those new parts that were just created. You can see they're all right in here. If I go to the top level part that was created, you can see that it did in fact generate the bill of material, and it also created the levels. Remember, we created a hierarchical bill of material. It created the levels as we expected as well. So again, you can see if you do already have a lot of your bill of material information that's located inside of spreadsheets, it's very easy to take that information and quickly get it back into PLM 360, or I'm sorry, inside of Fusion Lifecycle.
Formerly known as
PLM 360.
Like
we're all still trying to get used to the new name. So in summary, during this presentation, I wanted to again point out that all the product data is in one system and it's controlled centrally. So there's not a whole bunch of different versions of this out, just one single source. Users can also quickly find the specific data they need through filters, through creating their own views, and they can more quickly get their job done when they're dealing with bills of materials. A full history of the bill of material is maintained. So if I ever want to go back and see what a bill of material looked like 3 years ago, all I have to do is change the date, and I can see exactly what it looked like when it was shipped to a customer or when anything like that happened. I can also compare two different versions of bill of materials and understand exactly what the differences are between both of them. And then, like I said, if you guys already have a lot of information in Excel, fantastic. We can take that information, we can bring it in, and we can make it very quickly useful for you in managing your BOMs.
And with that, we're going to go ahead and jump into the Q&A. If you do have any questions, go ahead and type them into the Q&A panel. While I'm waiting for a couple of those to come in, we'll go over a couple of things here. First off, I'd just like to invite you all to an event that KETIV is having. Excuse me. I'm doing this in chronological order. So we do have a Vault Care 101 workshop happening today. If you happen to be within an hour of KETIV, feel free to drive to us right now. We're in Brea if you need those information. If you need that information, please let us know. We do have another Vault Care 101 workshop for those out in the Pacific Northwest, specifically in like Oregon, Washington area, and that's at the Autodesk offices in Lake Oswego. I'm going to go ahead and type this this link here into the chat panel, and if you feel free, or if you want to go or are interested, feel free to go ahead and click that link, read more, and if you have any questions, please let us know. Beyond that, we do have one other event that's happening on December 6th. It looks like it might be December 6th and 7th here in Orange County, California, which is our Inventor Gunslinger event. What that is it's a pretty great opportunity, actually. Autodesk, their product management team and development team are actually going to come down to Southern California, and we're going to co-host an event in which we can invite users to jump on the I guess it's going to be beta by then, beta release of the next Inventor. They're always looking for new suggestions for innovation or reviews of the new things that they're planning on putting into the software. So if you are interested in coming to something like that, there is a survey question. Please go ahead and respond yes to that, and we'll get you all the information once everything is solid. It looks like here we've got a question from David. So David asks, what are the export options for ERP?
So typically the way that we do it, you can obviously export it out to Excel just like we can import from Excel. But we also have a partnership with a company called Jitterbit that creates a cloud-based integration platform that already has a bunch of pre-built functions and pre-built capabilities that let us configure passing information back and forth between PLM and an ERP system. It makes that relatively simple as far as integrations are concerned.
Definitely.
So there are a few different options when it comes to communicating with ERP.
Yeah, and if you have any more questions about that, anything specific, David, please reach out to us. We'll be definitely happy to answer any questions that you have if they go like a little bit deeper than that for sure. There's another question here from Ricky. Ricky asks, can I only use Fusion Lifecycle on my browser, or can I use it on my computer, like desktop?
So that's a great question. So it is accessed through the browser, but what's nice is since it is cloud-based, they also have applications for your phone. They have applications for tablets. So really, you can access Fusion Lifecycle in a number of different ways. But if you are on your desktop, any browser pretty much, I mean, there's a list of supported browsers, but they support a lot of different browsers out there, so it's pretty easy to log in and to start doing your work. But it is all browser-based.
Okay, sounds good. Yeah, so it's not like your Inventor program where you just install it on your computer, you can use it. It's a little bit different than that, just inherently because it's a cloud-based tool. Let's see here. A question here from Michael. Can you adjust part numbers that are auto-generated to reduce the variable of having multiple part numbers for the same part in your company?
I'm sorry, I'm trying to understand that question.
Yeah. So can you adjust part numbers that are auto-generated to reduce the variable of having multiple part numbers for the same part in your company?
Well, there are different ways that the part numbering scheme can be set up. I mean, you can make it so that you can manually type in the part number if you want. The way that we showed is just one way of doing it. You can set something up so that it generates a number for you, and then you go back and you can manually override it. It really depends on how you want to have it set up.
Right, yeah. So he's mentioning that he already has part numbers for everything, for all of his parts. He just doesn't want to, I guess, create a second one when he imports them, or if he imports them.
Right. Well, I mean, you could see when I did my import, I had part numbers in my spreadsheet, and it basically just took in those part numbers, and that was its part number. So, like I said, we can set it up pretty flexibly so that it can take whatever part number you need it to.
Definitely. Thank you, Nathan, for sure. So I think that clears up Michael's question for that. Let's see what else do we have here. And here's another question here from Eric. How do I get Fusion Lifecycle? How does that work?
Yeah, so Fusion Lifecycle, you definitely want to talk to whoever your account representative is. But like we mentioned, it is subscription-based. And so what that means is, there's basically an annual cost per user, and it is based on named user. And once you have access to it, there's one administrator per site that's typically determined. They send you a URL. You log in using that URL, and then you're able to start using Fusion Lifecycle out of the box. Now, it comes pre-configured in using a lot of best practices that we've found with different companies that we've worked with. But by all means, it is also configurable so that you can create lifecycle states that match the needs that you guys have. At its core, it's a process-based tool, and we can help you also with the configuration, or we can do administration type classes, and you're welcome to start working on doing your own implementation as well. So there's a lot of different options when it comes to implementing it.
Definitely, for sure. Definitely good to know for sure for those of you who want to know. Again, I'd like to reiterate that Fusion Lifecycle used to be PLM 360, so for those of you who are confused as to like, oh, did PLM 360 go away, or what is Fusion Lifecycle? It's the same product, they just changed the name.
Yeah.
To make it a little more consistent with the rest of the platform products. So I think with that, we've gone through everything in regards to questions. Yeah, I don't see any new ones. If you do have any, feel free to go ahead and type them into the survey, or go ahead and email us at lifeline@ketiv.com or questions@ketiv.com. We'll be more than happy to answer those for you through there. But with that, thank you again, Nathan, for being here today.
And thank you, everyone, for coming and participating in our AVA today. We appreciate it.
Definitely, for sure. And since I won't be here for Halloween next year, I decided to wear my Buzz Lightyear T-shirt for AVA today. So with that, to infinity and beyond.
Thank you.